We're at 1:33 p.m. and today we have the CNMI Public School System. On behalf of the committee, I wish to welcome the Commissioner of Education, Dr. Lawrence Matsu, and your key staff. I also recognize some of the board members that are here. And just for consistency purposes, we are being covered live on social media, same Facebook page, the station, as well as the cable television channel 23. So we're gonna move on right ahead, and this time I ask the Sergeant Arm to assist the Commissioner to the seats. And Commissioner, feel free to just call whoever you wish to assist with you. So before I recognize the Commissioner, just to this morning we established a quorum, but this afternoon we are joined by members of the Fiscal Affairs Committee. To my left, Senator Ronnie Powell, who chairs the Education Committee, and to his left is Senator Paul Manlonia, who chairs the Health Committee, and to my right is Senator Manny Castro, who chairs the PUPC. And the other members will be joining us momentarily as we progress forth with the this afternoon budget hearing. So at this time, without any objection from the members, I wish to go ahead and recognize Commissioner Komatsu. Please, and kindly just to state your name for the record, and also feel free to introduce whoever's in this afternoon.
Roger. My name is Lawrence Camacho. I'm the Commissioner of Education for the CNMI Public School System. To my left, I have the State Board of Education member and also Chair of the Finance and Personnel Committee, Mr. Andrew Orsini. And then to his left is Ms. Donna Flores, who is the Director of our Special Ed Program. To my right, I have Jonathan Uggan, who is the Acting Finance Director. To his right is Ms. Lucretia Guerrero, who is also she is the HR Director. And to her right is Jackie Che, who is the Federal Programs Officer for the CNMI Public School System. We have a bunch of other folks behind us here from our office and across our district from schools as well.
You may proceed with the presentation if you have.
Okay. I'll defer to one of our board members to make a statement, and then I'll proceed before our presentation with my statement. Thank you.
Buenos dias, honorable members of the Senate. My name is Andrew Lohan Orsini. I'm an elected official to the 19th CNMI State Board of Education, representing the island of Saipan. I serve as the chairperson of the Fiscal Personnel and Administrative Committee at this present time. I humbly come before you today to ask for your help and expertise in one request, that you commit at least the $40 million to sustain our public school system. This is not just a number. This is an investment in the success, stability, and future of all our islands. Over the past several years, our state reading and math assessment scores have risen significantly. These assessments measure more than just academic achievement. They measure how well our students are prepared for college, the workforce, and the military. This success did not happen overnight. It has taken many years of careful planning, consistent effort, and the hard work of teachers, counselors, administrators, and staff to build the systems that are finally showing results. But let me be very direct. If funding is reduced, all of this progress will be lost. We will see school closures, loss of instructional student time, and the departure of our most valuable educators and staff. Our accreditation will be in jeopardy, which students absolutely rely on for college admissions, military enlistment, and job opportunities. And if this is lost, all hope is lost for our island's future. And most of all, I can only predict that our reading and math scores will drop drastically. The years it took to climb to where we are now will be erased. And even if our economy improves down the road, we will be forced to start from square one again. This will take some measurable time. At one of our PSS town hall meetings, one participant wisely said, and I quote, "If any successful country, there are three pillars that country must stand on in order to thrive. They are a strong healthcare system, an excellent national security, and a high-quality education system." But in order to have all these systems running efficiently, you have to place highly educated and qualified individuals within those systems. So when you think about it, education is the most important of these three operational pillars, because only education can produce those capable and qualified individuals. This participant's words remind us of a truth we cannot ignore. Education is the foundation that every other system rests upon. Without it, we lose our capacity to grow, to protect, and to sustain our good commonwealth. I think some senators may be struggling about the idea that giving to PSS would mean taking away from other government agencies that are already exhausted. I want everyone to know that since 2019, when I first came on board with the State Board of Education, the CNMI Public School System has already been exhausted. We've had our cuts. We've stretched ourselves thin financially. Since then, a lot of our best employees have already left the islands. Our teachers, our principals, and our district already make much lower salaries and sometimes only half the salary of their counterparts in the rest of the United States and even in Guam. These hardworking, passionate, and committed employees show up to work every day, not just to pay their mortgages or rent, their car loan or student loans, and many have medical bills, but they show up to work so they can improve the lives of our people. Their passion and their determination has allowed our students to afford the many opportunities their teachers could not afford for themselves. The public school system, not asking for more recognition or compensation, we just want to be able to keep coming to work for the schools and continue putting students first. I am pleased to know some honorable senators here are also products of the public school system. And I am sure that because of your high quality and accredited education that you earn, you can surely find a way to save it. Thank you once again, honorable members of the CNMI Senate, and I thank you with very much deep Sizus Maxi.
Chair Member Orsini, please carry on, Dr.
Thank you, sir. Buenas, Halfadelis, and Tiruami, Chairman Hofschneider, and the esteemed body of our CNMI House of Senate. I want to start by thanking you for this opportunity to present our fiscal year 2026 public school system proposed budget. And I do this with high optimism and cooperation as we plan for the upcoming fiscal year. Please indulge with me as I state fully that I would first like to report to the committee that our students are thriving. They are thriving in all of our schools across the CNMI Public School System. We have highly qualified teachers with a curriculum that is high quality, and this stems from a high standard that PSS and the Board of Education, through policy and implementation, have together instituted over the course of many years. The beneficiaries, our students. Our proficiency and graduation rates have risen to the point where almost 90% of all of our schools have met or exceeded our district goals for literacy. For example, our district goal last year hovered around 58%, and yet our students scored 62% and 65% for math and reading. Early literacy scored at 71%. This means that we had an increase of 17% in reading and 7% in math compared to the year before. We thank our educators and especially our students for their hard work and excellent performances. And we thank our counselors and administrators for providing the interventions needed so that our at-risk students would also achieve. Also worth mentioning is that all of our schools are equipped with a safe environment. We managed to open the doors of all of our 20 schools on August 19th because they passed inspection and received their occupancy, fire, and sanitation permits. We thank our central office staff and school administrators along with their staff for putting a great emphasis on providing a safe, clean, and healthy school environment. Our student success story is attributed to their hard work, but also stems from the hard work that our employees across the public school system really care and are passionate for student learning outcomes and their achievement. The positive news and many more impactful programs across PSS are the results of your investment over the course of many years. Your investment in public education and has and continues to impact the CNMI's real treasure, our youth. Please know that their growth and development prepares them for a future they demand. So thank you for your investment in our kids' future. Yet we begin our new fiscal year here on October 1st, 2025, which is a significant date because it marks the beginning of the post-ARPA period. And I highlight this because we know that external factors like recent pandemic, the decline in tourism had a tremendous impact on our government's ability to generate the revenue that it needed to pay for public services, like public education. And what resulted in previous years, particularly the past 3 years, is that the federal ARPA funds reduced and mitigated the possible shortfalls to fund public education. Data shows that this prevented further loss of learning and instead slowly moved the needle for increased proficiency over time. And as you may have heard and seen, there is recent report that our AP passing rate also increased tremendously this year. This was a result of good investment for building capacity through the ARPA dollars. Today, we are using the same momentum to establish a framework for a college and career and life readiness initiative. We thank our district level program leads and teachers who continue to support our college and career ready students. We fully understand that PSS no longer has the federal ARPA funding cushion to offset that gap. So we present our fiscal year 2026 budget that will be allocated to fund personnel at $42 million to support the 972 FTEs comprised of school administrators, their admin staff, teachers, teacher aides, instructors, librarians, counselors, program managers, and state and district level staffing to support 20 schools and 10 Head Start centers across 3 islands. We budgeted $7 million for all others, which include operations of our schools as well as local matching requirements for federal grants. I want to emphasize again that PSS operations have been stabilized by ARPA in the past fiscal years of 22, 23, 24 due to local financial shortfalls. This prevented implementation of work hour reduction and possible furloughs, which would have also impacted our mandate to provide 180 instructional days by law. Our personnel cost for the proposed 26 budget reflects a 3% increase compared to last fiscal year, and it's due mainly to our projected expenses related to certification and licensure adjustments for teachers, instructors, librarians, and counselors. And it also is inclusive of the cost to fund additional Chamorro and Carolinian language and heritage studies program to boost PSS's language and cultural preservation, a constitutional mandate. On instructional materials, with 1 CMC 7838 mandating the earmark 1% for the CNMI PSS budget to be allocated exclusively for the purchase of instructional materials and not to be reprogrammed for any other purposes. On capital improvement, we will address our school emergency repairs and keep schools compliant with building safety and fire codes, sanitation and occupancy requirements. We earmarked $500,000 for CIP. Now, ensuring safety, health, and well-being of our largest stakeholders is important, and that is our students. And this is for the procurement of supplies for the ongoing mandate and upkeep of 20 school campuses. In our submission, we had also included fiscal scenarios, which we could unpack during this hearing and beyond. Not to go into details, but the scenarios will provide all of us with information on the various playbook options we would venture into based on appropriations. In closing, I want to state that this is going to be a difficult year for public school system, but we continue to ensure every dollar we receive brings value and impact to our public school students. We are always focused on programs that deliver the greatest impact to them. Your public school system is a large and complex organization. Thousands of activities are happening inside our classroom and across every spectrum of our learning environment from Monday to Friday and even on weekends all year round. Although large and complex, we still find strategic ways to improve and advance the district by providing quality education despite budgetary constraints. And as a result, we continue to implement cost-cutting measures such as savings of up to $1 million per year from the installation of our solar panels in 19 of our 20 school campuses. We have adjusted and continue to make adjustments to our school calendar to ensure that we meet the 180 instructional days mandated by law. And cutting our locally funded school operations by 50% is also something that we have done. We also use federal grants to enhance and to supplement the learning environment of our students through innovative programs and initiatives, like the AP program I mentioned earlier. And as we speak, we continue to implement cost-cutting measures like suspending travel and bringing professional development to the CNMI as much as we can. We continue to look for more ways to minimize costs, just not to the detriment of student learning. Again, thank you for this opportunity to collaborate on what is the best course of action to proceed with, as we strive to maintain the provision for quality education to almost 9,000 students across 20 schools, 10 Head Start centers in 3 separate islands, with over 1,200 employees who are locally and federally funded. Furthermore, please note that we will illustrate the appropriations made by this body over the past 10 years. Dial in and focus on the fact that in 2015 we had a certain amount, and we will see that in the presentation, and that PSS was allocated a certain amount. Interestingly, there is a bill in front of you that plans to appropriate $31.7 million, even though you and I and all of our stakeholders, especially our students, fully understand that the cost of education has risen, and consequently the outcome to rising costs in our public education is our rising student achievement. We managed to pull through and were able to provide quality education because of the factors I mentioned beforehand. However, I am here to tell you that $31.7 million will not cut it for PSS, it will send us backwards. And although the bill in front of you states that PSS should not cut instructional days, I'm going to be real with you and look at the and so that we can all look at the numbers and see and have clarity on the reasons why 31.7 million will not cut it for PSS. This legislature appropriated $33.4 million last year, and the only reason why we were able to survive with that budget was because we had $12 million that ARPA was able to cover. And I informed this legislature that the $12 million we had to cover with last year is not going to be around this year. It is not our children's fault that the economy is the way it is. I am not here to point fingers or on who is responsible for the economic situation we find ourselves in. I am here to simply advocate for our students and to remind all of us that we should own up to the task and prioritize education and resource it with an appropriate funding of at least $40 million, or decide to send it backwards with 31.7. I am, as we all should be, here to serve our people and to do everything we can to protect this institution. We are one government that faces an impending storm headed our way. My job is to put up the shutters and protect the windows from being damaged or destroyed. I am asking you to provide us with the adequate resources to ensure that all the windows and all the doors are boarded up. The proposed $31.7 million will cause some windows to go without shutters. The damage and the cost to repair afterwards will be more immense than if we protect our public school education system right now. I am pleading with this one government we are all operating in. Do not de-invest in our Commonwealth's future. Protect it by resourcing PSS with the funding it needs to continue on our momentum for providing quality education. Hence, producing the right workforce and problem solvers to bring this economy back on its feet. You want to fix the economy and advance our society? Invest in these kids today. They will take the mantle soon and lead the way for a better tomorrow. Still, I thank you in advance for your investment in education and for your continued support to our children. With everything we do, we always say students first and educators always. Jesus Wasi.
Thank you, Dr. Mancho. Any other member wishes to, any of your team wishes to offer any comments? No, Commissioner? Or you want to jump right ahead?
We can jump right ahead to our presentation. The slides are here. We'll go through it. And we'll be able to entertain any questions if we
Certainly.
shake our hands.
Go right ahead.
Next slide, please. So as you see, with a population of about 8,092 students, to this day, as we speak, there are still parents who are coming in to register students. We have 331 plus 47 in the Head Start and Early Head Start program. Our population on staffing is 1,276, and you can see the 972 for local and 304 for federal. Next slide. I wanted to, as I alluded to earlier, just to show the good news here. The good story is, if you look at grade 8, who were 8th graders, the cohort who were 8th graders back in 2021, they were achieving at 40%. That means 40% of them in that cohort across the district was at 40, were achieving in reading. Then 36, it went down in 2022, 23, 39, and then back up, something happened in 2024. Great improvement there, and then even more so good news in the previous year, last year, when they were 12th graders and they were achieving at 75%. Slide. On math, this is what it looks like for the same cohort at 44, 50 in 2022, 23, went up to 55, and then even good news. So as you can see that for both reading and math, the same cohort, something is going on with our teachers who are providing the quality education to ensure that 69% were proficient. And then when there were 12th graders, they were achieving at 72%. Slide. So this shows the general fund revenue that we've received. If you look at our financial statement here, in 2024, we were given 28.4. And then last year, we were given 33.46, and I mentioned earlier that we had the 12 billion to cover and then over the years, 24 and before that, we were using ARPA to kind of to add on, right, and shorten the gap that the local government could not give us. And that's the reason why this year it has gone up to 49. As mentioned by our chair of FPA here in the committee, 40 is a good start because we understand the economic conditions. So I just wanted to kind of demonstrate where this funding is going to be. I alluded to personnel costs, they're 42, and then all others 7.2. And that includes the matching requirements that we have for the grants that we receive. Okay, slide. This shows that the general revenue is 49 is what we're asking for. So these are scenarios that I alluded to earlier. That if we get 44, this is where the money is going to go to, and at 40, and then at 31. As you can imagine, the shortfall of $7.9 million, almost $8 million, would be deficient if we get 31.7. Slide. We wanted to get clarity as we were reading the proposed bill presented to the legislature, or to the Senate from the House, where it says, no budget cuts or austerity measures shall be applied to teacher salaries, instructional positions, essential student programs. For example, meals. Meals is provided by federal funds. Counseling, special education is provided by federal funds. Chamorro Carolina Language Heritage Studies, until all non-instructional administrative cost reductions have been exhausted. I want to just inform the chamber here, the committee, that non-instructional administrative cost also includes busing of our students to and from school. A minimum of 86% of all PSS funds must be allocated directly to instructional expenditures. John, can you elaborate on what we think that means?
Sure, thank you, Commissioner. So with that, we looked at the total expenditures for at least the budget for PSS. We can look at the previous slide. We looked at personnel and breaking that apart with our operations that go to our schools, instructional materials, and funds that go to our programs. So in this next slide, we have here a breakdown of the cost appropriation between operations and personnel that go to central office for central office to operate, and all other funds that support our schools directly. And we can see with that proportion, 86.46% go directly to our schools.
Go back to the slide. So the next one that we wanted to get clarity on is no budget cuts or austerity measures shall be applied to teacher salaries, instructional positions, or essential student programs. We went through that already. Cost-cutting measures. So we look at the original cost for utilities. We've gone down and we've saved 1.1 reduction to operational budget. With what we plan on doing is costing us 629, right, John?
That's a saving.
The savings. And then for travel suspension, because of course all that is pretty much on the federal side, and then no budget for CIP. We can't afford to fix or repair schools with 31.7 if we were to comply with the measures that were indicated in this bill. Central office admin staff furlough, it only would equate to almost 200,000. Won't make an impact to what I presented as what we need. Total 1.92. John, do you want to elaborate a little bit on that?
Sure. So with the compliance written in the budget bill, we wanted to make sure that we did exhaust all non-instructional administrative cost reductions as much as possible, because we're cognizant that we need to protect the schools as much as possible. The schools' operations, how can they operate at 80 hours per pay period? And we wanted to list out possible cost-cutting measures that we actually are already using today, because we've known that the assistance from ARPA is going to end eventually. So that's where the solar investment comes in, where we have reductions in our utilities. And we have been progressively over the last few years reducing allocations that go to central office and school operations. So with
Yeah, let me say that, when we are limited with the resourcing to begin with at 31.7, and then you want to restrain and constrain us to a certain course of action. We're not looking for, I think we should be the ones making decision of where these cuts should be based on our own expertise from the educational side, but what happens is if you tell us to cut the district headquarters because we want to save the schools would be operating with no district to support them. And then that is when the accreditation comes into play, because our accreditation is a district-wide accreditation. Schools are accredited by the quality control and the quality assurance that come out of the district management and then the school's management of their individual institutions. Together they become accredited, we become accredited. If you cut the head off of one or the other, obviously the accreditation is going to be in question. And as alluded to earlier with statement from our board member, that's going to jeopardize the future of our students who are demanding the accreditation, the credentials that they will get from that accreditation so that they can then proceed and continue to become successful in life after leaving our public school system. So non-general revenue source funds appropriated fiscal year 26 shall be allotted monthly, except programs that require one-time payments may receive advance allotments. Jen, go ahead and elaborate that.
Sure, so there was a statement about the possibility of having certain government agencies receive a one-time advance of their full first quarter allocation. So we wanted to see how will that affect PSS, how can it support PSS? So with an estimated, or with the projected 31.7 million budget, the 25% advance payment would be 7.9 million. So within our finance department, we saw, okay, how can we stretch this to support PSS, not have any cuts for our schools, operate schools at 80 hours per pay period. We normally spend about 1.5 million per pay period. That's payroll plus paying our vendors, accounts payable. So just giving that amount, it'll stretch PSS for that 1 quarter allocation, 5 pay periods, up to pay period ending December 13, which is insufficient for the full first quarter, which ends in January. So even if we did get the advance, we still will be working at 80 hours for our schools. We're still going to come to that tough spot come ending of the I think it's pay period 26 ending December 13.
So as going around talking to our stakeholders, I have to be real with them, right? Really don't want to do this, but we have to let them understand what it will not afford for us, it being 31.7. We were hoping that when we asked for 49, in our definition, the gross revenue of 44 is really 25%. Nevertheless, we were hoping that the administration who submitted 40 for us would go through. And that was, I said, a great start for us, knowing the situation we find ourselves in as an economy. But then I heard through conversations, and we see it through this bill, that 31.7 is what is proposed to be allocated to the public school system. So we had no other choice but to be real and make it personal for those that are going to be impacted, primarily the students, the families, and all those who continue to demand and really expect the support that we give them as a school system. But we cannot continue to remain hopeful if we know that there's an impending storm, as I mentioned earlier. When there is one that we see and it's a problem, we have to lay out the problem and enable everyone to see it with clarity so that we can then work on not making it a problem when it is expected to become a problem. So it's the reason why we went out. And when we did that, I said these are the things, when we looked across the board in our entire organization, very complex, where we could begin to make the cuts in order to continue operating and to reduce as much as we can or minimize as much as we can the impact on the negative side on the learning of our students. That decision is something that we've been working with, and we're working with the board, and it is hard. It is a hard pill to swallow, but we come here to this chamber now informing you that this is where it's going to be. Now, the bill is going to constrain us even further with what we just looked at in the previous slides. So we're asking the understanding, the collaboration, and working together to figure this out. I believe that when a solution to make us go to 40, I think would cut, it would still be very painful, but we have ways and we have strategies to prevent any of this from occurring with that $40 million budget. But 31 certainly would cause us to go this route. And this is where we've been saying that furloughs would start from, and it will go all the way down to even the school mergers, which was alluded to earlier as well, when we closed down certain campuses and merged with another school. We can scratch out DAOC, just really kind of, because that's a very small impact to the overall scheme of the budget. But at the same time, we also have federal funding, as a matter of fact, to build the campus for that institution. So we're going to cancel that and not make that a school that will be closed, but it can continue to also still merge with another as we continue to ensure that the students coming out of there are being provided with the education that they need. But go ahead, John, with 5.8 as an explanation.
Sure, so this was done through an exercise where we broke down in terms of personnel, how much it costs to fund our bus drivers, bus conductors, our principals, vice principals, teacher aides. Every single, personnel group was broken down and recalculated, and then thinking about what it takes to operate a school. I used to be a school principal myself, and working with the team to see at the barest minimum, how can we not impact the classroom? So that's why on that list there, you don't see highly qualified teachers. Majority of our teachers are highly qualified, so they're not impacted by the furlough. It's those other classes or groups of folks that we looked at as possibly not funding in the time that we don't have any budget for our allocation until possibly there's any assistance provided to the system. So we provided those broken down costs to see at the barest minimum, bare bones, how can we run our schools? And I can tell you from experience as a school administrator, it's tough, it's painful. For a school to be successful, every person on the campus is necessary. The custodial staff, the registrar, the counselors, they all play an integral part of the school ecosystem, and it all plays towards the success of the students. So whenever we have someone out, and I speak from experience, let's say someone's out on medical leave, extended medical leave, the students feel the impact, the absence of someone. But the dollars can only stretch so far. So these are at least the proposals within our working committee, how much we can cost to make the 31.7 work.
And here we present a 64-hour work schedule is really the bottom line when it comes to that type of amount that we would possibly even, we fear getting 31.7. And it says October 1st, it's already October 9th, and we're afraid that September 9th, but it is October 1st is coming up, right? And so we're afraid that, with just a couple of weeks, we have to plan somewhere and be ready to implement something. I hope that we have a budget by October 1st so that we can continue operations, or else we don't have any budget to work with as we begin the fiscal year in the middle of this first quarter of our school year. So austerity Mondays, no school for students, no work for staff. Employee hours, 64 for every bi-weekly. And we were going to make the decision to include both local and federal to be affected by this. in instructional days, then because of those lowered and reduced hours for instructional and non-instructional staff would equate to 150 instead of the 180 that's required by law. What that means is a state of emergency is going to have to be declared so that we don't break the law. Intercession days will be eliminated to maximize instructional time. Slide. Did you want to elaborate any more on that? Okay, next slide. So, what does this mean? I'll let John, who's a former vice principal, talk about the impact of the larger class sizes, because that is really what's going to be realized when we start furloughing the non-high qualified teachers.
Yeah, so the impact of larger class sizes, that's if we not have any substitute teachers, for example. So a common strategy that principals use to accommodate the absence of the teacher is splitting students among classes. So that inherently creates an increased class size. But if you don't have a substitute teacher to cover the class to continue instruction, that the time of the students being split can last longer depending on how, we won't be able to fill positions. And of course that diminishes the capacity for our teachers, counselors to provide support for our students. In addition, it's quite straightforward. Whenever we add additional burden to our staff, it creates staff stress and burnout. And of course, we want our teachers to be as high performing as possible every single day they step into the classroom. So these are some of the effects that we have whenever we have reductions, especially to personnel or whenever we have a furlough in place.
One of the main objectives that I really want to get out of this presentation or this hearing, and also throughout the time we communicate with our stakeholders and the community at large, is to not get lost in the numbers. We don't want to get lost in the numbers. However, I keep going back to at least two numbers. One in particular is the feared number that I have, very concerning to me and all of us in the school system, because 31 is not $18 million less than what we need. It is $9 million less than what we are able to work with. The bare minimum. You want us to make public school system operate or make it work with not just a $2 million shortfall. You're asking us not even for a $5 million shortfall. You're asking us to make this very complex, large organization, as I explained, lots of activities happening each and every day, to make it work with $9 million less. Amount that we all believe is not realistic. So how realistic do we need to be? If we want to be realistic, we need to make these measures occur. Because this is, $31 million is not going to be able to afford any of that we're trying to not want to cut, but we will have to with that type of budget. Okay, John, you can go ahead. No, we're not going to get lost in the numbers, but we can go ahead and show these previous years and the budgets that we've had. The bottom line here is, in 2022, we're at $25 million. In 2009, we were at $34 million. In 2025, you want us to go to 31 when we're asking for 49, and we could survive with 40. Which means that the cost and the quality of education have increased, but yet we're going to go backwards because the resourcing is not going to be there. And that's the fear that we have and the concern. Thank you. Go ahead, John.
Sure, so this is a key timeline, I think, to just show how the appropriations have been for our public school system. As the Commissioner mentioned, the investments towards education has been decreasing, but then of course it's impacted by our economy. But I also was a classroom teacher during the time. I want to just highlight when 2012 we had 29 million. I remember as a classroom teacher struggling at that time, even rationing the tissue that we gave out to our students, the supplies and markers that we had to use in the classroom, because we knew that operations were short, and I had over 30 students in my classroom, but we made it work because the system was struggling and the economy was struggling at the time. Of course, we don't want that to happen for our students of today. If we make the right investment for our system, for our students.
Chair, that is the end of our presentation. We conclude with, unprecedented challenges remains in front of us, but we remain committed to placing our students first. Difficult measures to safeguard this wonderful thing that is already happening for all of our kids across our Commonwealth. But we're gonna have to all suffer if we make the choices that we don't want to make. And I get it that you guys, this legislature has a tough job ahead of it, with a very, small economy or economic growth or lack thereof. It is hard to maintain, but we're asking that you consider the priority, and the priority for our school, for our kids really is, I think, the one that we should put up first. We continue to work with the board, we continue to work with community to work together with you, the legislature, and come up with the best solution. But, with administration submission of 40, the board, myself, and all of our team members across the district are willing to sacrifice still with that number, and we're going to be able to make it work. But 31.7 definitely will not cut it for us. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner, and you're all good, right? And thank you for taking us through those presentation. Certainly appreciate the time that you spend to make sure that you articulate the face value of where the budget is right now. Please know that the budget is before the Senate, but that doesn't mean that it's done. It's a done deal. We're still going through the motion of the budget hearings, and that's why we're having these important meetings today. If no objection from the members, earlier today we had another agency to which the agenda was adopted unanimously, that we dispose of a public comment. But if it's okay for the member, for your team to allow members, I wish to go back to public comment so we can allow some of the members of the public to comment on the order of business for today's meeting. I think it's appropriate that we allow our people that are here today to share their testimony. So, Molicano, members, let's allow that. So, no objection?
No objections.
So at this time, the floor is open. Sarge, can you please use let's take a couple of minutes recess so the Sergeant Arms can situate the podium and the mic. the public and of course to the community. And I again want to repeat that this is a budget process. There's no finality to the version that we have before us. So and this is part of the legislative process to try and get to a workable product. So I ask everyone to please take heed on that information. And so with that, the floor or the podium is now open for any member of the public to proceed to the podium and speak to the mic, and please state your name for the record. And I respectfully ask to limit your testimony to 5 minutes.
Hello, everyone. Dr. Ty Dorham, and I'm here more to make a statement. You know, when we're looking at our budget, we're looking at the future of the CNMI. And when I come here and I look at the history, CNMI was not just Micronesia or a little part of it. It was everything. The trust was built around the CNMI. People from the other island nations were sending their students here to be educated. And so you have a footprint on leadership. You have a footprint on the future of what takes place here. And it starts with you all today. As the commissioner said, we shouldn't be going backwards. We should be going forward. We should be inviting more here to be successful. So when the students look and they see the decisions made today, it is a direct reflection on them and for their future. You know, my direct boss is here, and there's times that she can't send me to other islands to service other people because we already have a shortcoming. And how horrible is that when we have individuals that are in need of extra assistance that we can't service them. Some of you all in this room are part of special ed. We're a part of special ed, had special ed family members, and so you know exactly what. So I'm begging you all to make sure that this budget happens for us. We need it. We need it for our future. And again, CNMI has been the image of what excellence is supposed to be for Micronesia. Let's keep that going. Let's not fall backwards. Let's move forward. Let's put the money where it's needed. And we at PSS can work together to clean up and make things happen that where we're a little bit more, financially astute. But we can't do that if you're going to take everything away from us in the very beginning. So we need you all here today to make that decision, to move us forward. This being forward is not only for here. When we look across our nation and we see our students that's going to the mainland for education, it starts here with you all. When we see our kids doing other programming and wanting to join the military, it starts with you all. You all set forth the image of what we're going to be, and we have to make sure that today you all give us more than what you all are suggesting, because we need it. We need it for the future, and they can't have that without you all. So I just wanted to come forward and make a statement because this is my home. I came almost 15 years ago, and I can't imagine. I flew to Tinian yesterday, and I'm pinching myself because I can't imagine that this guy, from the sticks of Kentucky, it's like, man, I'm flying. This is my home. I love this place. I can't believe this is me today. And I can't believe this is me today, hearing that we might not invest in the future. My daughter is the future, and I want to make sure she has the absolute best, because when I look at her, she is Moana. She is everything that the islands are supposed to be. I want that to continue educationally, socially, and mentally. So thank you all for allowing me this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Dr. Dorham. The floor is still open for any member of the general public to offer their statement in reference to today's hearing.
Hafade Zantiro, my name is Ainsley Parnez Ancheta. I am a previous student of Tinian High School and am currently a high school senior at Marianas High School. Students first, educators always is the CNMI PSS motto, but it is not only subject to the public school system. It is an ideal that the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Islands should respect, because it is for our future. In 2014, the legislature found that 15% previously guaranteed to public school education was not sufficient, because in schools across the U.S., many receive 25% or more. And so the Constitution was amended to guarantee, and I quote, an annual budget of not less than 25% of the general revenues of the Commonwealth through an annual appropriation. And so it states in Article 15, Education, Section E, the budgetary appropriation may not be reprogrammed for other purposes, and an unencumbered fund balance at the end of the fiscal year shall be available for reappropriation. Now, I look to today, and public schools across the United States now receive over 40% of local revenues in their state, as approximated by the National Center for Education Statistics. We have not been given the 25% we are granted by our Constitution through the current budget, from the last year's budget, and in the budget the CNMI PSS is asking for now. $40 million. As a concerned student of the public school system, a daughter of a teacher, and as someone who sees my future in the CNMI, I ask you to invest in our education, because it is not only for our future, but for the Commonwealth of the Northern Marianas Islands. I come here with the utmost respect for the legislative process and understand that this body is putting in all its effort into securing loans. However, it is not enough. In the Constitution of our home, education is guaranteed no less than 25%, and we have not been guaranteed this amount. It is through yesterday's Q&A with these students that I am able to understand why the budget approved by the House has not yet been passed. But our governing body should provide protections for our constitutionally mandated funding. Then we can discuss compromise with the Board of Education, with principals from our schools, and more importantly, the youth, the students of our future. I humbly encourage that better protections be met for our students, our teachers, and our staff, so that in our future, education is guaranteed. The future of our youth is guaranteed. And under the Constitution and this governing body, the proper funds will always be guaranteed. Thank you.
Tiro and Hafaday, esteemed leaders and community members. My name is Joanna Lynn Consolado. I am a senior at Saipan Southern High School, and I'm representing the students of the CNMI. As high school students in the CNMI Public School System, we are deeply concerned about the continuing challenges our schools face due to limited resources. Every day, my classmates and I see the effects of underfunding, lack of sports fields, equipment and facilities, not enough classroom supplies, overcrowded classrooms, and teachers who are being stretched thin, trying to do more with less. After recently attending the PSS Town Hall meeting with COE Dr. Camacho, our future seems exponentially dimmer as the possibility of a shortened school calendar and a drastic reduction in school staff looms. Our CNMI Constitution is clear. It mandates that education must receive priority funding from the local government of a minimum of 25% of general revenues before the unconstitutional earmarks are deducted. This is not a suggestion. It is a constitutional responsibility that exists to protect the right of every student in our islands to receive a quality education, especially in times of economic crisis. Yet, year after year, we hear about budget shortfalls, cuts, and excuses that leave our schools struggling, while our central government continues to ignore the 2020 CNMI Supreme Court slip opinion, which answered the certified question of what constitutes general revenues. Over 5 years later, the matter has still not been resolved due to the unwillingness of the central government to comply and the inaction of PSS and the BOE to enforce the constitutional mandate. In response to the comments made yesterday regarding PSS violating the law if it is forced to reduce the school calendar to 150 days, this matter could be averted if the constitutional mandate is followed. We, the students, respectfully call upon the CNMI Board of Education and the Commissioner of Education to stand firmly on this mandate and demand that you, our trusted leaders, abide by the 2020 CNMI Supreme Court slip opinion. Our future depends on it. If our generation is to contribute to the growth and success of the Commonwealth, we must be given the tools, opportunities, and learning environments that only proper funding can provide. The Constitution gives us a promise. It is now the responsibility of our leaders to keep that promise. On behalf of myself and fellow students, I urge you to enforce the constitutional mandate for education funding and make sure the voices of our students are not ignored. Because students first, and please remember that the future is in our education, and our education is in your hands. Thank you.
Any other member of the community wish to offer comments? Public comments to
Good afternoon. My name is Preston Boston. I'm the acting principal at FMS. I'm sorry I didn't really prepare for public comments. I came to show support, but I feel obligated to speak, right? Because I'm here for the kids and for the staff of PSS. And so I think just as an educator and all our educators here, no matter the situation, we're gonna try to make it work, right? And when you see the presentation, will $31 million work? Truthfully, no, right? But if you give us the option, as educators, we're always gonna try to make it work. Okay, and I gave an analogy at a town hall meeting, and I wanna present it here today. I coach basketball, right? And if you ask me if I can I coach 80 kids on one basketball court with 2 hoops and 1 basketball? If you're asking, can I do it? My answer is yes, right? Can I coach him to build a championship culture, to become champions in life? The answer is no, right? And so I say that to say just because we can do something doesn't mean we should, right? And so I urge that you do what you can to provide the 40 million, at least, if not more, right? Because we're not just talking about numbers, right? I know when we speak budget, we look at money and it kind of takes the focus, but we're talking about faces, right? And names, and there's students that we should invest in. Yeah, and I know Commissioner stressed it a lot. There's students who are gonna eventually take these seats, right? And so we have to be the example, okay? I know tough decisions are gonna have to be made, and we respect that. When you run for office, you already know that before you get in here. You know, and so we're here standing hand in hand, just hoping that you make the right decision. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Lynette Villagomez, and I'm the principal at William S. Regis Elementary School. Good afternoon, everyone. I would just like to ask this body, and of course, the other leading bodies, the House, our administration, to please come together, put your heads together, let us work together so that we can come up with options of how we can help support the CNMI, not just the public school system, but the entire CNMI who needs the funding. And so it's a really rainy day, and this is a time where we really need to take action, while we also help fix the economy. And so we would like to ask that everybody put their minds together, work together, for the betterment of the CNMI. And I think that's the only way to get to the solution, is to work together. Thank you so much.
Podium is still open for any other interested to offer testimony before we close. Thank you. We're gonna close. Oh, go ahead, please.
Good afternoon, Chairman Hofschneider and members of the Fiscal Affairs Committee. My name is Macy B. Tenorio, and I'm here as a member of the CNMI State Board of Education. I debated about whether to make comment because the voices of the students were so powerful, and I think they tell the story way better than I ever could. But I do want to provide a little bit more education about the Supreme Court slip opinion, and especially in light of the chairman's comment earlier about how this is the process, right? We are still in the process of finalizing the budget, and as you come together to discuss the budget, there's definitely some things that I want you to consider, and I hope that we'll be able to guide your discussions moving forward. And so as one of our students said, right, the Constitution talks about general revenue, and that the CNMI Public School System is entitled to 25%, not less than 25% of general revenue. The budget that the House passed, which was I think HB 24-46, defined general revenue as a remainder after expenditures, which we argue doesn't track the CNMI Supreme Court's controlling definition of general revenue. In their slip opinion, the Supreme Court stated that general revenues are determined by revenue classification, not by what remains after paying expenses. General revenues are designated special under a source purpose nexus. That means that special revenues require two things. One, a specific purpose, and two, a specific source. The slip opinion gave a perfect example of what that special revenue would look like. For example, the tobacco tax. And in their slip opinion, they stated that the tobacco tax was a perfect example because there's a specific source, right? It's the additional tax that we put on tobacco. That's the source. And the specific purpose is for anti-tobacco education and services and programs, right? That is a special revenue, not just taking earmarks and calling it special revenue when it has a specific purpose, but there's no specific source. So, to assist us in defining special revenue, the CNMI Supreme Court developed a test to ascertain whether the revenues can be identified as special, which includes, again, that the revenue must have a particular purpose as well as a particular source. And I quote, "This relationship must be evaluated on a case-by-case basis because the particulars of a revenue source and purpose turns on the unique circumstance of each fund." So I urge you, given that, I urge you to kind of revisit those earmarks that are identified in this bill and reevaluate whether all of those meet the Supreme Court's definition of what is a special revenue. As the commissioner stated earlier, our calculation of 25% is 44 million, not 31.7 or not even 40 million, even though that's kind of what our bottom line ask is today. So I encourage you all to go back again and kind of revisit those earmarks that are outlined in this, revisit the definition of general revenue, and hopefully we can come to an understanding about what that means and what our students deserve and what they are entitled to. Thank you.
Member Nori. The public comment is still open. Any other wish to offer comments?
Good afternoon, Chairman and members of this committee. Thank you so much for taking the time to listen to the pleas of the public school system, especially our stakeholders. I did want to just add the current bill that is before you, if you could please, during deliberation or when you're making hopefully adjustments or amendments to our part in particular, the public school system, that you reach out to us for some clarification, because from what I'm reading, some of it just is not feasible in some of the shalls, I'll put it. For example, special education is cited there as a federal funds recipient that should not be cut, or austerity measures take effect. And we simply cannot operate special ed alone. Special education is not a separate entity. It's not separate from the public school system. There's no way that we can have special ed teachers work without general ed teachers, without a counselor, without a school administrator, without even a commissioner. So, or a bus driver, or meals, or whatever it is. These are students who are general ed students first. So we simply, I think there's some maybe misconceptions that were put into this draft or this bill that was brought up to the Senate, and I ask that you please include us, if possible, in the conversation, just for clarification purposes, because there are some things that simply need to coexist in the public school system. We're a very large entity, very large institution, and we all are working together. There's no way that one can work sans the other. So if possible, please, I ask the Senate to include us in that conversation so we can make the bill correct. Some of it just does not make sense. So I ask your indulgence if you can please include us in that conversation so we can make it something that is allowable and doable. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Ms. Flores. Once again, the podium is still open for comment if anyone wishes to offer any more. Okay. So with that, public comment is now closed. Once again, I wish to mention that the bill is before the Senate. It's not final, but that's the reason why we're having this process of budget to get clarity and perhaps exchange of conversation, which we'll be entertaining soon. Yeah, that's why we're here today. So at this time, now the floor is open for any member to pose their question to PSS. I recognize Senator Calvin.
Thank you, Chairman. And I'd like to welcome the Commissioner, the leadership team for today's presentation. It's a very deep conversation and very critical. What I want to do is commend all those public comments that did come forward. I know you did have proactive public hearings. The intent of requesting, the proposed budget according to the booklet at 49 million at one point. That was probably in April when this was brought in, and then 5 months later, knowing the realistic approach that we're at we're just trying to cover operational expense and personnel. it is, I know we have one where we're not, I don't wanna say we're taking away from PSS. We're trying to collaborate and see how we can, you know, come to an agreement as far as the collective revenue that the Commonwealth has within the last, you know, opening of this school year. I do thank Mrs. Flores, because I know our commissioner mentioned special ed, you know, which I'm a former member of as well prior, and food and nutrition program are federally funded. Although I know from my personal experience, we do have local funds that blend in. So, I mean, that's the creative part about it. We're looking at, with the ARPA not involved, that variable out, how are we gonna go about, you know, inclusively grading, just being able to operate, and, you know, we don't, you guys gave a fearless example of, you know, what was that I wrote down? The furlough, you know, the different scenarios of having furlough in place. Also, the 64-hour work schedule. I mean, that's the climax of the worst is the worst, you know, scenario. But I believe that within our legislative, you know, laws and jurisdictions, we will need to look at the numbers, because the numbers speak for itself. As much as performance and progress and so forth, how are we gonna provide that equity across the board to ensure that we do function like our Senate President mentioned, you know, in the interview. We're looking at, you know, we don't want our kids to get, you know, Mondays off and then 4 days out of the week, the extreme, and then the next thing we know, we have to do a reduction of force. You know, just that thought in mind. Parents are gonna be at home, students at school, you know, those are the different scenarios that we look into. So it's really a deep conversation how we can collaborate and make things work. I know I just had this on the budget proposal, just for PSS. We're looking at 2025 at 33.4K. We're down with your quotation of 31.7, you know, in regards to the 25%. We're not stating that the 25% is not going to be granted or given, but based on revenue collection, Department of Finance, you know, the revenue that we have and the trajectory, and then the closing of businesses, you know, realistically, we know the forthcoming of the events. So, you know, just all those factors we have to consider when we do make the decision on the appropriations needed to ensure that these extremities that you present do not occur.
Chair, if I may respond to that. To your point, Senator, thank you very much, though, by the way, for reminding us the reason why we are hovering around that number of 40. We asked for 49 because that technically is what we really need. If you really want to be, you know, real, that is the need entirely to continue to function and continue to advance forward the education system. And it's the reason why when we look at and evaluate the economic condition, and when I was working with the late Governor Palacios, we were talking about, you know, I mean, he had his non-adversarial way of really kind of understanding PSS, but at the same time allowing us to understand his situation in trying to run this government, right? And so 49 and 44 is 25 in our eyes, but you know, I'm glad that the board could support 40 to start with because we understand the conditions of our economy. But I'll continue to remind ourselves that 31.7 is drastically going to go back, make us go backwards. Over.
Senator, you still have the floor, Senator? You want to yield to?
Yeah, you.
Go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Senator Collins. Going back to what you're mentioning earlier in terms of numbers, and I just want to be very clear about this. Back in 2020, when the brewing of this pandemic was going about, and the fear factor of coming to our islands, keep in mind that it was just in a coincidental circumstance that when our economy, and the numbers will show you, if you look back in 2021 and 2022, it will show you realistically where the PSS or where the central government was at the time. And I can assure you that back there in the midst of the starting of the pandemic, when we had to furlough 600 some teachers at the time, because the government at the time was not able to sustain us in terms of our funding. So this in itself, in a reality, and God bless, I'm not saying that it happened for the worldwide and areas about the pandemic, but my goodness, that in itself, when the ARPA and the ESF, Educational State Student Funding came in, it was a blessing. That kept us afloat all the way to now 2024, where we're at, and we end, and now going to 2025. So this in reality needs to be looked at, because there's where we can conjecture where we at as far as our overall financing of the economic status that the CNMI had, and at that time also with the tourism and so forth, the Hotel Association. These are the things, are the factors that I think that this committee needs to look at. So I just wanted to just share that with you. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. Thank you for that explanation. Now going back, because, me being in that position, so, I empathize for that too as well. Share sympathy, because it was affecting us. And I'm gonna put myself in that position at the time where we did have to have, this was prior to pre-COVID, so that is a great blessing. But prior to pre-COVID, when I take a look at the base, I just want to go with the base salary. I know I can recall we had base salaries, we had an increase, and then what we had to sign was an agreement. So by year end, there's a certain allotted financial difference given. So can maybe the financial, do we still have that in place? If we can explain that.
Yes.
Yeah, I just want to know if we do have that in place. What was that?
Yes,
all
I'll
about?
have the director for HR kind of explain that a little bit more in detail, because there's a lot of history behind it, but I think bringing context to what you're talking about, I think is important at this point. So go ahead.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon, Chair and members of the Fiscal Affairs Committee. Thank you for the question, Senator Calvo. So basically, in 2017, when the BGR was very, very high at 284 million, at that given time, we went back and looked at the salaries schedule. And at that given time, we were able to move forward with the salary study and the proposal to change the salary scale for all teaching staff, counselors, librarian, instructors. And we revisited also Public Law 7-31. We did bring it to the Senate at that given time. And we were also, the recommendation that came from there was to start off at $16,100 for our non-certified staff. And so we went ahead, it was above the CNMI minimum wage. That, at that given time when the revenue was great, it was good, we were able to adjust our employees accordingly. And then revenue went down in 2019. There was a budget shortfall, and at that given time, we had our employees sign an addendum, which took effect as an austerity measure, which adjusted the salary based on the difference from the scale of prior 2017 and 2017 scale. So since then, all teachers, counselors, librarians, all PISA staff have been on austerity. And then up until this day, they are still on the reduction rate. So we haven't lifted that austerity yet since 2019. Hope that answers your question.
That does, you know, it's just trying to recall on that, see that measure that we had to take, or the CNMI PSS took at that time. And then similar to the situation where the current request that, you know, we're looking at our current revenues now, and whatever we do generate by the third or fourth quarter, a similar perception. What we're trying to say is, like, let's not overlook, we do grant a certain amount, and then, you know, looking at the economical situation we're in, and the decline in revenue, you know, with so many stated factors on the media, we just gotta be very critical at the decisions we make, and careful, because I would like to be transparent and parallel it to that similarity, you know, where we have to come up with certain measures as far as distribution of funds. Okay, so if that 31.7K would be initiated, you know, kind of safeguards, we're not jumping the gun, and then you look down the line, you know, we gotta see what the initial revenue cash flow coming into the Commonwealth. Is it gonna get better or worse? And therefore, you know, like lawfully, what revenue, existing revenue towards the end of the quarter do we have to furnish versus straight out, you know, apply what we may not have currently, or we may go into another decision or loan offer to ensure that these, what do you call it? The consequences, these actions don't move forward for our students. So that's, I'm trying to, you know, take a look at the different perspectives.
Yeah, thank you. If I may respond to that, thank you for that. You know, the unfortunate thing that we're faced with right now is that we're reliant on government funds because we do not generate revenue. The Constitution came up for that reason, is that it enables, right? The framers of the Constitution enabled us as a society, a Commonwealth, and they framed it to the point where it meant the many public goods that we wish to have, what they wished to have back in the 80s when they were ratifying this, when they were drafting the Constitution, they idealized on the concept of a public good, and that is public education. And then, so how do you continue to serve the public through public education? You have to fund it. And economics really kind of matter, right, when it comes to that point. It's like, and I'll just end by saying, it's like, as a parent, I want my child to make it to the gas station, and gas station alpha, that child's gonna gas up and make it to the actual destination that I want him or her to be at, to thrive. And I've been given that child $100 to make it to that destination alpha, to gas up and then make it and thrive. But then, all of a sudden, I am gonna cut the $100 and give him or her $50. And that child's not gonna make it to gas station alpha, and he's not gonna be able to thrive. That's kind of like the situation we find ourselves in. So all I'm asking is, again, we're relying on the decision, and I hope that the decision is not 31.7, because we cannot stop by not being real with 31.7. It is not going to work. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. I'm gonna go ahead and yield back. Chair.
Senator Manny Castro, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Welcome, Commissioner and team. You know, there's been a lot of comment about the 25%. And in line with what Senator Calvo mentioned earlier, our Chairman of Education, yes, it's really hard. In fact, I was one of those people, like many of you, that voted to give BSS 25% of the budget. Even though at the time I was at NMC and I was like, we're only getting like 5%, but we support, education. If you look at all the countries in the world that came from poverty, a country like South Korea, was really poor, and they invested in education. They invested in industries that are going to bring in the GDP needed to fund all the government programs. Education is really important, and like you said earlier, I'm actually a product, almost 100% of PSS, but I would say 75%. I'm a Canary and a Alitay, and then the rest is Centennial High School and Oregon stateside. But history was really important. If we know history, we can prevent the mistakes of the past. And in regards to the 25%, the government right now is loaning a lot of money. That's not revenue, that's a debt. Even the money that we're using to pay the pension obligation bond is loan money to pay money that was already owed to the settlement fund. So it's like double loans. So that shouldn't be counted as, if we're borrowing from MPLT or any other, that shouldn't be counted as a general fund revenue. It's very unfortunate that we're in this situation, and that's why education is really important. Maybe we need to start mandating gap principles for all government employees and start educating our youth that you don't bank on money that you don't have. And I wish I had more of that too, like, in school, but also economics, both micro and macro. Maybe we need to start mandating that as well. So, if there's one thing that I always remembered as working in higher ed, data-driven decision-making for continuous quality improvement. When you talk about being at risk in terms of accreditation, we've been in show cause. Director Jackie was right there with us. We were in the most severe sanction of accreditation. We were about to close shop, and all of that relates to funding, but it also relates to the performance of the institution itself. Because, just being, my experience in education is sometimes more money doesn't mean better results. It's what you do with that money. When I was at NMC, we looked at all the data that the students provided, like what was really important to them. Things like, for example, the number one thing was childcare. A lot of students didn't feel safe at night, so what did the college do right after that? To boost enrollment and retention, we lit up the college. Like when you're landing at night at the airport, you see NMC because of all the LED lights flashing the campus. But again, that's data-driven decision-making for continuous quality improvement. So it's always important at the same time to focus on the signal rather than the noise. And that's what data-driven decision-making is about. I've been getting some emails from students about, as someone who comes from education, I hope your stance is for PSS. Yes, I'm with PSS, but at the same time, at that time when PSS got the 25% or the law passed, as a voter, I was expecting that money to go mostly to the classrooms, mostly to the teachers, mostly to the curriculum. Our CW program is going to expire in 2029. I need to see data on, are our students just leaving Highland, or are they getting the skills they need to contribute to the economy? Because the scholarship is the same way. We keep funding education to support workforce development for other states. So maybe one way we can save money is just suspend off-island scholarships and convert it to loans. So, you know, and we'll fund that money and put it to PSS. So, you stay on island for the first 2 years and save money, and then if you're gonna go off island, it's a loan program, and when you come back and serve the community as mandated in the MOU, then the government will pay back your loan. So the Constitution is very clear on what education is supposed to be like in the CNMI. It needs to be relevant to the needs of the community. So our programs need to be relevant also. Like construction costs are getting expensive. Search and rescue, for example, we have technology, like maybe we can start embedding drone programs, FAA drone programs to do search and rescue to help our government be more efficient. There's other ways we can really synergize our efforts, but I mean, I could, you know, like back then the government didn't have as much money in certain cases, but it wasn't just about the salary. A lot of the teachers, it was about the passion, right? And, you know, from Miss Pinala to Miss Quinto, Miss Camacho, Mr. Govendo, Miss Adams, Miss Pedro at Hopwood, you know, like if they needed to teach a little bit extra, it wasn't, and headcount was a lot more back then, but we still, you know, it wasn't doom and gloom. The educators back then were very resourceful. And students, maybe we need to start cleaning our own classrooms if we're not doing that. Because some of the schools are kind of out of hand in terms of discipline. You know, my earlier what was said about education, it's really the Mercedarian missionaries of Belize that started education in Micronesia. All those nuns in Maturana that are now retired, from Oncarmo to the schools in Palau. And my auntie, Sister Remedio, Remedios Palacios Costru, that's why it was called Sister Remedios Preschool. She always said, "I edukasyon mas guarban sa tisinyang sakki, tisinya unbendi, zan ninayon niyong fadini." She said things like that. The power of education. But at the same time, the wali edukasyon ang gintoza respeto. So we really need to also re-emphasize discipline, respect, and I know the elementary schools are really doing that well. Middle schools too, some of them. But a lot of the challenges right now, I think it also stretches to the household, but at the same time, we also need to embed that in some of our programs. When I was at one of the hearings, there was a lot of students that were driving without a license and getting into juvenile delinquency issues, and you know, I thought it's like maybe we need to bring driver's ed back to the schools, and maybe that earmark can go to PSS, like funding wise. We tried it before, but you know, everybody was upset, but then now we keep getting accidents, hit and runs, and all of these things, and you know, so possibly, you know, we can look at these kind of things to help fund education, but at the same time synergize to meet the needs of the community. I mean, how many drivers are there in the CNMI? If it was like, if you get into an accident or you are cited for some reason and they mandate you to go to driver's ed, and then the money goes to PSS, you know, maybe we need to start doing things like that. But As part of data-driven decision making, this is going to be an Open Government Act request to you, Commissioner, regarding, some of this is available online, but it's not all the information is available online. So I'm requesting student achievement data, academic performance on standard tests, grades. At the same time, student growth data, measures of student progress and improvement over time. And trend data, any reports and analysis to reflect how PSS has met or is meeting constitutional mandate to provide free and appropriate public education in the CNMI. At the same time, I'm going to be submitting a similar letter to OMB for every year that funding was provided to PSS, and we can look at the correlation. But so far, thank you, because most of it was already provided. And I've been looking at the national standards, and in fact, in recent years, PSS is performing above, from what I'm finding online, above the national standards. So right now, it's showing that PSS is doing great strides, and I also want to commend a lot of the different personnel, whether it's distance ed or others, because they're actually really recognized in the nation. But at the same time, we also have to make sure that we're aligned to our constitutional mandate and ensure that our curriculum and instruction is relevant to the needs. Because right now, we have a lot of needs, like our economy. Like I met with someone from customs, and I was like, oh, how's it doing? And they were like, our imports are low. And in my mind, based on economics, I was like, that's a good thing. That means we're importing less, we're buying more things on island. Maybe we're not buying a toti, we're actually growing it and using it, going old school, but in the eyes of revolving accounts and slush funds for the department, it's not a good thing. So we have to think beyond that, the bigger picture, and I'm confident that that's actually best practice within PSS. But just to make a good informed decision, that's the data that I'm going to be requesting. Sarge, if you can provide this to the Commissioner.
You done, sir?
I do.
Would you like to respond to me before I request the next?
I'll just briefly respond to that. Real quick, sir, Senator, thank you. If signal is what you're looking for, I am wearing a really bright road guard vest, orange in color, up on the hilltop, and I was holding together a beam of light, beacon, and I was signaling at 49 million, and that wasn't working. And then I moved over to another hilltop, and it had 44, because that's what we thought our 25% was going to be. But it sounds like your definition of 25% is a lot less. And I now moved to another hilltop, and I said, never mind the 25 that you think it is, because the Constitution says no less than 25. Please give us beyond the thing that you think is 25 and give us 40. Otherwise, I'm going to fall down that hill at 31.7. And I just want to kind of say that. Secondly, this thing with the retirement settlement and the loan with MPLT, I have not heard yet that we have together as a government sat down with leadership, good leadership, to have the parties at stake provide us with where they think they could also sacrifice and help in the cause and be part of the solution, because right now they're just part of the problem. So we need good leadership when it comes to that. And then lastly, sir, and I respectfully say that, when it comes to the workforce, we are doing everything we can to graduate these students to be successful in life. We're even shifting the way we operate when it comes to the pipeline and making sure that they're college ready, life ready, and all that, right? Workforce ready. But when they leave the island, it is not our fault. It is the lack of opportunities that are here. And I think we should look at ourselves in the eyes and say, what have we done to create those opportunities to keep and make sure that they don't leave the island? But don't look at PSS as being at fault for that, please. You know, so I just kind of want to respond to that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Commissioner. We're joined by the Senate President, who is unable to be with us in person, but I wish to recognize him. He is joining us online. Senate Pres.
Thank you, Chairman, and thank you, Commissioner, staff, to the students, they're present. Thank you so much for exercising your rights to fight for what you think is appropriate and what you are understanding is the right course of action. I saw yesterday. I'm sorry, I'm on the island of Tinian. My mom is going through something, so I'm taking care of home. But I did see photos where there were peaceful protests outside the legislature as well as Capitol Hill, and I just want to say that I agree, and first of all, it's on my place to agree. It is your First Amendment right to go out there and protest or speak your mind about how you feel as to what is currently happening with PSS specifically. Where I think we're dropping the ball, and I'm going to include the commissioner and the staff, is that we have failed in allowing all of you to understand the full ramifications of the discussion at hand. So let's just go through the tabletop numbers. 179, that is the ceiling of the resources available for allocation for appropriation for FY 25-26. This is an increase of $20 million from FY 24-25. Now, if you take 25% of 179, you get 44 million and change. So let's start off with that understanding. Now, we have $179 million. We have our debt obligation to the pensioners of $29 million. And then all other debt obligations, which PSS feels as if, and I'm not here to argue about the right, wrong, or indifferent. I just want to say it for what it is, for the sake of everybody in the room, man, woman, and child, to understand. So 179 less 52 million to include the 29 million that goes to the retirees. That's just 75%. And to the students there, understand that the retirees are on a fixed income. They don't get to go back to work. As commodities rise and fall, as gas prices rise and fall, as CUC rises and falls, they are just there on that income. And all the retirees are not being paid the same amount of money.